Who's going to introduce it?
Oh, you are. It's your episode.
Okay, there we go. Okay,
Let's
ready? You
let's
ready?
let's include this. Let's not cut this.
All right, sounds good. Well, welcome everybody to an unexpected podcast. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about quite a few things. As you can see, we have a guest on today, Alisher Aminov. Alisher is one of the prominent players competitively in the U.S. He has recently come off a victory of Adepticon, which is the U.S.'s second largest event, and he is known for playing competitively across the eastern part of the U.S. and the South. So for today's topic, we're going to cover a few things, actually, some life updates for us, competitive play in the US, and Ardacon. Before we do that, as always, we will talk about a list from one of the viewers. If you feel discouraged because you've sent a list and you're not getting it reviewed, we apologize. I realize on Facebook I'm looking through and I'm like, oh, shoot. But just keep posting it and we'll try to get it in there. But yeah, Matt, can you pop up that list?
Sure. All right. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So we have a list here from Arash Hussein. And he says, hey guys, here's my proposed Ardacon 650 point list. Would love to see what you all think of it as I play Farharad often and win more games than I lose on average, which is good. That's what you want. So this list has Suladan on Armored Horse, 4 Haradrim Warriors with bows, 2 Haradrim Warriors with bows and spears, 5 Serpent Guard, and 1 Watcher of Karna with twin blades. And he has a Mahood King on camel with shield and spear, 4 half trolls, 4 Mahood warriors with blowpipes and spears, 1 Mahood raider with blowpipe and spear, and then a second Mahood King on camel with shield and spear, 4 half trolls, 2 Mahood raiders with blowpipe and spear. And it comes in at 29 models with 6 bows, 6 blowpipes, and 7 might. He says the idea behind this is taking some Mahood warriors that scenarios like divide and conquer, no warband is without some kind of spear support range capability, as no one will be as one will be self-contained and the other supported by Haradrim warriors. So that is his plan. So as I do say from time to time, I actually just took a list similar to this. I'll talk through my list at the end. I'm curious to get your guys' take on this. But I took a 600 point version of this to a tournament up in Maine a couple weeks ago. So anyway, let's open the floor. And Alisher, you're the guest, so that means that we put you on the spot, and you got to talk first.
Oh boy. Okay. Um, all right. I'm just trying to get my wits about this list. I'm gonna preface my response with I do not play this, and I have very little idea like what this competitively looks like on the table. So I'm trying my approach to it is just if someone walked up to a table with this, how would I or walked up to the table with this, how would I feel? Um I like the heavy investment into the half trolls. Obvious. I think if Nova this past year in the US taught me anything, it's that they are definitely undervalued and perhaps underrepresented for what they can bring. I mean, obviously, the biggest draw to them is courage, and the pure bonus really does help address that quite a bit. So I like to see that, and obviously, you have 2 Mahu Kings on camels, and they're very good for their cost. The numbers are tight at 29. I think that's hovering right along the line of acceptability. I wish there was more than just one additional camel. If there were, it doesn't even have to be much more. If there were just 2 of them in addition to the 2 Mahood Kings, I'd like that a little bit more. I don't, to be honest, I don't know how much value I think 5 Serpent Guard are bringing. Now, obviously, they're not too much more expensive, but you have 8 half trolls. That's 5 models that are running around with 2 attacks. The list kind of continges around them as part of your hammer. I don't know that paying the extra premium for the Serpent Guard is entirely needed. Otherwise, I like the list. Again, 29 models feels a little tight, but it's a unique type of list. I know the guy who won Nova with with a half troll heavy list also had pretty tight numbers. Um, all in all, I do like it. I like it for what it is. I think as I'm looking at it from the perspective of my own play style, I have a very like defensive style of play. This is a very aggressive and offensive style of play. So from that perspective, I don't know that there are certain elements about it that I don't like for my play style, but for what it is, assuming the guy knows how to play aggressively, I'm a fan personally.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that too, the two kings with Suladan is a really, really good thing at 650
Yeah.
points, because the kings, in my opinion, on camels are some of the, I see them kind of as like baby Boromirs. And they're in my opinion some of the nice evil men, like not named heroes that you can repeat for only about 90 points when you like almost fully kit them out. And they can do nasty things like heroic combats on their camels, especially at 650. You're going to see a lot of Lake Town armies or a lot of different lower defense armies that people are going to try to hoard out. And you could like mow down like 5 or 6 guys just in the charge phase, or heroic combat and mow down like maybe like 8 or 9. So I like that. I do see what Alisher is saying. I think what you meant though, Alisher, to clarify, he has one camel in each warband. Did you mean 2 camels in each warband?
Oh, I didn't see. Sorry, the second warband. I thought that was just a rig. I saw the spear, and I wasn't computing that with being a war spear. So he has 4. So then I take that back. I do like that. I
Mm-hmm.
think 4 camels in the list work well.
Yeah, I think that too, because there are 3 kind of things that the opponent's going to have to worry about, and you can't really worry about all of them at the same time. The kings and Soladan mounted with their heroic combats, the 2 random cheeky raiders who could just do like cheeky things, and then the half troll battle line, which is disgusting. So I like it. The numbers, of course, if you're playing against this, what do you want to do? You want to knock out all the low defense models, try to break them and dehorse the 2 kings. And I don't think most people would commit too much with Soladan because he has 1 fate and that's your hero or your leader. You might go down with a point for VPs, but yeah, it's pretty deadly, especially once you see everything clicking and in combat. It's nice. Don't play against me, Arash, if we play at Ardacon. That's nasty list.
So looking at this from the perspective of playing at least a similar list to this recently. So the list I played, just for comparison purposes, was 600 points, not 650. So it was a little smaller. And it was, I had started with the Suladan unarmored horse warband, and I had 7 Harad with bows and 7 Serpent Guard. So I just had my 14 figure warband with 7 bows that was kind of like the base of fire for the list. And then I also had 2 Mahood Kings on camel with shield and spear. And instead of 4 half trolls and 1 raider, I had 1 half troll and 4 raiders. And I mean, you could take that list, and if you wanted to up it to 650, and I had 27 models. So you could do kind of the equivalent version of this by just throwing in another couple of half trolls and then maybe spending some points to, I don't know, give a Mahood King a blowpipe or something like that. And I guess it's worth discussing, because I think this is also kind of a valid way to do it, where you've got a bunch of half trolls and then 1 raider. I guess it's worth talking about the relative pros and cons of the half trolls versus the raiders in my experience. And it's, oddly enough, the raiders do more offensive damage, and they do more offensive damage because of that charge. Because they're just as likely, if not more so, to kill something on a charge than a half troll is if they win. Plus, they get the chance to kind of run over people on the way, and they're cheaper. And oftentimes, because it's only 1 strength 4 hit, oftentimes that run over won't go off. But every once in a while, you'll have a raider go in that just kills like 3 or 4 guys on the charge, and then ends up in contact with somebody, rolls up and kills somebody. So every once in a while, you can have a charge go off with one of these raiders that knocks out like 3 or 4 figures. and can really just screw up a battle line, especially if you can get one of these raiders like around to the soft spearmen in the back, the early defense 4, and just kind of runs down the back of a battle line and kind of kills one after another. I mean, I think if it, with that said, the benefit of the half trolls is that they're tanks. The problem with the raiders is if they go in and they don't kill the guy on the charge and then they lose the combat, they're probably going to die because they're only defense 5, and they tend to go down when they lose the fight, especially if they're charging into somebody who has spear support. Whereas the half trolls are just like tanks. They'll go in and they may not win the fight. If they win the fight, they'll probably kill a figure because they're not knocking people over. They're strength 5, but they're not knocking people over. So they'll probably kill a figure. They may get lucky and kill 2 figures. And if they lose, they're probably not going to take a wound because they're defense 6. And if they take a wound, that's fine. They're still in the fight. I mean, I put a half troll into Celeborn for he tanked Celeborn for 3 turns before he finally went down. And they're great at that. So it kind of depends if you want to try and be a defensive rather than an offensive player. I mean, what I found when I was playing with the Raider list was, I was perfectly happy in scenarios where armies were divided up. I wanted to play Divide and Conquer. I wanted to play Maelstrom of Battle ones because I knew my opponent was going to be split up, and I just didn't care because I had 3 self-contained warbands, all of which could fight, 2 of which were extremely mobile. Because if I had to, I could just leave the half troll behind and have him waddle up eventually. And the rest of the raiders would, go off and do whatever they needed to do and go wherever they wanted. And I found it to be a very flexible list. The only problem I was going to have is, if you ran into a table with a lot of terrain that somebody could hide inside and that person managed to get in the terrain and hide it, I didn't really have a good answer except shooting at him with blowpipes, which you do because you could just send in the half trolls if somebody hides in terrain. But this is an Ardacon 650 list. Ardacon has terrain, but it tends not to be the terrain you can kind of hide inside from cavalry. It tends to be like a bunch of tents that you can hide behind. And it's kind of less of a risk that somebody's just going to go into the woods and camp out because they're not big swaths of woods. So I guess having said that, I would lean to one that kind of leans heavier toward the raiders than the half trolls. And I think that kind of suits my play style a little better where I can just send in the big charge, set up the big charge and then send it in. But, I don't think this is necessarily a wrong answer if your solution is set up a battle line. I mean, I think if I were you, I'd maybe, and you wanted to stay more half troll, I'd think about deleting 1 half troll from each of these warbands, throw in a second raider, which will give you kind of 4 points left over, and then spend some of that to give the rest of your Haradrim warriors with bows, spears. You could also probably do that by maybe deleting one of the Mahood warriors or something like that. Oh no, they got spears, so they're good. But and then have just some extra spears just to get behind the half trolls. That's maybe I think what I would do. And also that gives you a second raider because I mean the other thing that I found is because the raiders are very much glass cannons. I mean, sometimes you would send in a raider and he would just die. And it was always good to, what I would tend to do is I would kind of send in the raiders in waves. So 4 of them would go in and then they kill a bunch of stuff, but then they die. Or 2 of them would die. But I'd always have the second rank of raider or the second squadron of raiders kind of in reserve. And then when the first couple of raiders died, they kind of go into the holes. And then, it was that second charge that kind of carried the day. So I think kind of maybe have 2 raiders instead of 1 in each of these warbands. So you can send in the king and 1 raider to do a charge, and if that one raider dies, you've got a backup that can come in the next turn. That's, I guess, my thought on that.
Yeah, I think you guys have all said some interesting things. I also have not really played a list like this. I've theory crafted lists like this. I think it's interesting to take this at 650, because that feels a little low for half trolls, in my opinion. Just because, well, A, you don't exactly have a ton of them, you have like 8 of them, and your model count is pretty low, but obviously if it's been working well for him, then good on him. I did find it interesting that he was talking about making self-contained warbands in Divide and Conquer, and he committed Mahud warriors specifically for that scenario, which I'm not entirely sure about. First off, I think that half trolls can generally fend for themselves on their own pretty well. They don't necessarily need the blowpipes and spears. And if you're really concerned about something like Divide and Conquer, I think maybe the better option would be to put all of the raiders in one of the King's warbands and put all of the foot troops in the other one. And basically, you can keep your main army together and sort of have this flanking warband that can just run around and remaneuver very quickly in the Mahud King with like 2 to 4 raiders. At least in my opinion, that would be a warband configuration that I would like a lot more. Sort of be able to have that that hammer with the 2 big warbands combining the half trolls with the spears of the Harad, and the more mobile sort of contingent. So if I were going to modify the list, I would say modify the warband composition to make it a bit more flexible, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you probably want one warband. You want, if you're in a 3 warband army like this, if you're going to have 2 infantry warbands, you have those 2 start on the same side, and then you have the all cavalry warband start on the other side. Because what you want to do when you're playing Divide and Conquer with an all mounted army, or at least an army that has like all mounted warbands, you play it a little differently than you would if you're playing an infantry warband. I mean, when you're playing standard infantry warbands, when you play Divide and Conquer, what you got 2 people starting in the corners, and they kind of march to the center, and you have a fight in the center. When you're playing a mounted army in Divide and Conquer, your strategy is entirely different, and your strategy is basically, all your mounted stuff converges on one half of the other guy's army in one of the corners, kills it all, then turns around and heads back to the center and takes on the other half of the army. We'll talk about this a little bit when I'm, because I took an all conned army in a tournament recently and played Divide and Conquer, and that's kind of the strategy that you use. And I mean, that would be an advantage in this, is if you're going to play Divide and Conquer and you had kind of more raider based armies, raider based warbands, you could take those 2 raider based warbands, pick whichever one of the enemy's corners was weaker, and send all your camels after that and just crush it like a grape, and then turn and while all the foot kind of waddles to the center.
I know what you're talking about though, Matt, because I did, before I left to South Korea, I played a list just like this, but at 800 points. Alisher, you were there in Tennessee, in Nashville, but I did what you kind of did, Matt, is I had a few half trolls and a lot more raiders, and it did allow me in all those scenario like based movement scenarios to do that, to like basically outflank an opponent, hit them really hard, take out a warband, and then go munch another warband. And even a few half trolls will allow you to hold out while the other 2 warbands are destroying another warband and then coming to the rescue. So it is a type of strategy, but both Matt and I, like he mentioned, like we play con too, and we play like those really hard hitting kind of strategic things. But yeah.
I also like the idea, if you sort of reconsolidate the warbands in the way we were sort of discussing, of dropping the Mahood warriors with blowpipes and just getting more bows in the Harad warband. Because I think this list benefits a lot from bringing the opponent to you, because if you bring the opponent to you, you've got a bunch of half trolls, right? And having as many bows as possible to be able to do that is very effective. Also, Haradrim guys with bows and spears are a bit more points efficient, I believe, compared to the Mahood warriors. Don't quote me on that. But so that'll give you some flexibility as well with weapons and stuff like that. So I think that would definitely be my main piece of advice. Consolidate the half trolls in one warband, consolidate the raiders in another. Maybe get rid of those Mahood warriors with blowpipes and spears and turn them into more Harad guys.
Yeah, although I mean he's got, there's only a couple more guys he can get because he's got
well, the Harad has 12, so you can put 6 in.
He can put 3 more in. Yeah, 3 more guys in.
Suladan has 18 models.
Oh, he does. Okay. All right. Yeah.
You can put in 6.
Right.
Which is fine.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but if you see us, Arash, at at Ardacon, like come say hi and stuff, and we're really curious how you will do with this list, because
I think he said hi last year.
Yeah,
I met him last year. Yeah.
He from the UK?
Yes, I believe so.
Nice.
Well, I assume you are listening, Arash. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, and then actually segue to Ardacon, mentioning that we are currently putting together a team that consists of potentially podcast members and people who have been on the podcast. We know that many of the players in Europe have already gone to their different groups and whatnot. So you might see us kind of put together a US team with some podcast joiners. I know Alisher, all of us kind of plan on going there. 2 life updates. I myself am moving to the Netherlands in August. So
it's a slightly larger SBG community than does Honduras.
Honduras and South Korea. Like everyone's like, oh, are you like getting the meta from around the world? No, I'm Luke Skywalker in like the most disappointing Star Wars movie ever, just drinking that like nasty milk from those penguins. And then I go and I'm gonna have like one final glory, like hurrah, where I probably sacrifice myself at Ardacon. And then I'm just gonna turn into a space ghost.
So make sure you get that eye tick like Luke Skywalker too.
Yes. But yeah, no, it will be a bigger community. I'm looking forward to it. I've already talked to the guys from the Rotterdam White Scars. My city is going to be a little further away from Rotterdam, but there are a lot of players in Utrecht. So I expect to, get some Dutch meta going on. And next time you guys see me, I'll have a Dutch accent. But speaking of, also, Evan, what about you?
Yeah, jeez. Sorry, my dog is digging back there. I can't explain why. Anyways,
he won't get through the carpet.
Oh, he is really trying. So, yeah, I'm going to be moving to Ireland. Not Northern Ireland, Ireland. So I'm going to be in the EU, which is a great thing for college. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of fun, but it also means I'm going to be playing a lot more over there. Looking to get connected with the Irish groups. So if anybody watching or listening right now knows anything about that, you know, where the page is, those sorts of things, hit me up. I'd really appreciate that. Hopefully I'm going to be competing in, you know, other European events, maybe some British events as well. So it should be a new experience, should be fun. See how I stack up against all the British dudes. So yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, Evan's like, I'm gonna compete and stuff. I'm like, I'm going to retire, y'all. Like, expect me to be at the lower table with a beautiful painted army, like talking to all the non-competitive players. But yeah, it'll be exciting. And like, we'll probably see each other at some European events. And I'm sure both of us, having the competitive itch, will attend a lot of the Ardacon qualifiers. So
yeah, I hope you enjoy your retirement, Rainier, because I know you've got a baby. You're like, what, 50 years old now? So
58.
Yeah.
Yeah. Respect your
Getting
elders.
up there.
Get it right.
Hmm.
Okay, but back to speaking of competitive talk, we have Alisher on the podcast today. Before we go into, I guess, a little bit about competitive meta, Alisher, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why Philadelphia is the best city to play in the US?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been playing the games for probably 5 years now. Actually, my introduction into competitive play was Rainier. Rainier used to live about 40 minutes to an hour from my house. So I think I had made a post on one of the American page, and Rainier, said that he was interested in playing. Little did I know Rainier was A, as competitive, but B, also as good as he was, because he would throw games against me, which I didn't know about at first. And that really probably was the beginning of the competitive spark.
It was like you and I would play, and then Alisher would be like, "Wow, like it was such a close game," and I was like, "Yeah, bless your heart, it was really close. Like here we go." And then I went to Nova, and I
No,
won it,
yeah.
and you were like, "What?" And I was like, "Alisher, like bless. I'm not gonna go play you at like a coffee shop and destroy you 12-0." Like, yeah.
To be fair, though, that was really, really annoying because, like, not even necessarily like the idea of not being as good, just the idea of like someone fixing games against me. So from that, Rainier was actually really, he was very encouraging for me to attend Nova. I go to Nova, Rainier wins that Nova. I was like the shock and betrayal, as one would expect, right? And so I think we played a bunch, and then the Philly SBG scene really started taking off then. There was a group of 3 guys, Samir, and at the time Jesse, who all kind of came together and made Philly SBG. And then it really took off from there. I think Rainier departing and COVID happened. You brought up on like the Great Plague, Rainier, when you left. Everyone stopped playing because of the pandemic and so on. So right now, we've really started getting back up to we have more probably players in the Philly SBG scene than we did before COVID. So many people just want to play the game, and we have a bunch of events all the time. But from a competitive standpoint, obviously continued advancing with the game competitively, have had the opportunity to travel to a bunch of tournaments. So now, just excited to be able to keep playing since we've come away from the pandemic anyways.
Yeah, that's good. And then, are there certain events that you've been, I guess, proud of, or you've won or done well at that you kind of like are happy about?
I think the event that Adepticon was a great like tournament win and experience, just because less so. It was great because of how many people played. It was a really cool experience just because of how hectic the weekend was. I woke up at 2:30 that Saturday when we were playing, traveled to Chicago, so like no sleep in between, and then was able to just do well at the tournament. So that was really fun. The Nova stand-in was probably one of it was a really fun event. That one too, like my car literally broke down on the way there in the middle of the night. We left my place at like 5 p.m. and got to Nova at like 5 a.m. So that was another really cool story. I think probably the tournament that I won that I'm now probably the most proud of was a Tennessee tournament. I can't remember how many years ago now, that I took Khazad-dûm. Khazad-dûm's probably my favorite army in the game just because it's the army that brought me into the game. So being able to go to the Tennessee tournament and win that with Khazad-dûm was really cool.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's a good like example of the US meta in the sense there hasn't really been there's always been, of course, the push and pull, like people chasing different metas and lists and stuff, but because the US is so large and players aren't always connected because of the regional, I guess, area, you do see a lot of interesting winning armies, like mentioned before, last Nova, Mahud won, Alisher has one with Khazad-dûm. You're seeing a lot of just random armies like go up there because it gives a chance for like different metas to form and stuff. But yeah,
I think like the unpredictable nature of like the US has regional meta, at least in my opinion. Like for right now that I've hosted 5 Philly tournaments, dwarves in general are right now the flavor of Philly. I don't know why. Dwarves are it. It doesn't matter the variation of dwarves. Dwarves are very much so what people are bringing here. We really in Philly or just in Pennsylvania in this region are all about defense and all about like defense in terms of not necessarily defensive play, but defense, actual defense. And people really like just the hard defensive heroes. So like Gondor, Minas Tirith, that's always popular, but it's very popular here. Iron Hills, Army of Thor, Khazad-dûm have all become very popular here. And I know it's always different. That's what I like about the US, not to derail what you were saying. But with the US, I feel like you get, especially when you travel, you get great practice because I think the most, in my view anyways, sometimes the most competitive armies to play against are just armies you don't have experience playing against. And in the US, everyone's playing so many different things. Depending on the region you're from, you get a lot of experience playing a diversity of armies.
So I'm curious about the armies that you played at Adepticon, because that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's an area of the country that's kind of far enough from the East Coast where Evan and I usually play, that I'm wondering if it's got a different flavor of army. And we've never been out there, but it's also a big tournament with a lot of people there. So I'm curious. I mean, tell us what army you played there, and tell us the types of armies you were seeing there, the types of armies you were playing against, and kind of how that interacted with what you were playing.
Yeah, Adepticon had a really good spread of armies. I think they had approximately 70 players. Where along that line, I'm not certain. It had a really good diversity of representation. I think I took Survivors of Lake Town. I've been playing Survivors of Lake Town this year really because of Ardacon. I wanted to just pick an army that I knew had competitive merit and then just stick with it. My first round at Adepticon was Azog's Legion. Second round was the Balrog Legion. I forget its name. Game 3 was against what is it? Erebor Reclaimed. Game 4 was against Assault on Helm's Deep. Game 5 was against Survivors of Lake Town.
Gotcha. And do you remember who the second and third highest players, what they were driving?
Yeah. Second place brought the Dragon Emperor Legion. The third place brought Pure Rivendell, which actually I've noticed is spiking up in popularity.
Interesting. Any thoughts on why?
Why Rivendell specifically?
Yeah.
I think it covers a solid number of bases. Obviously, Glorfindel is, the best his points, probably the best magic resist model or a fortified spirit model in the game. High fight, high defense. I think it's easy to get into the game with. Blinding light has become really important nowadays. I think it just covers a lot of boxes and plays just a solid overall mix between defensive and offensive play. I think that's probably why it's jumped up in popularity.
Gotcha. So what have you been seeing at the tournaments you've been running in Philly?
It's a great diversity. I think a lot of the traditional lists that, on the SBG forums that people are worried about, like Assault on Lothlorien, to an extent, some of the Survivors / Army of Lake Town mold lists, stuff like that. Really, we don't see a lot of that. Again, we're seeing a lot of Minas Tirith. We see Corsairs pretty often. We see Army of Thor, Return of the King, Khazad-dûm pretty regularly. It's usually a pretty good mix, though. So like I said, dwarves are popular, but everyone's playing a different variation of dwarves. Gondor's popular, Minas Tirith's popular. Everyone's playing it a different way. So I think those are pretty popular. Isengard, every other tournament, it feels like people are bringing Isengard. No one has really found their way with it enough. Right now, though, and I don't know that we've seen it at too many tournaments yet, I know for certain, though, for whatever reason, Philly SBG, everyone's really into Saruman, whether Saruman the White or from the good version or Saruman in the evil version. I'm seeing in our group chats, I'm seeing a lot of Saruman.
Interesting. So Evan and I went to some small tournaments up here. We went to one called Defense of the North. It was up in Maine that Henry from our group put on a few weeks or a couple weeks before. Actually, I think it was the week before Memorial Day. That was a 2-day 5-game tournament, and then Evan and I also went out to Motor City Mayhem, which was a 1-day tournament that the folks in the Michigan SBG League put on, and those were both fun. Evan, why don't you, because Evan won both of these tournaments. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you saw and what you saw in those tournaments?
Yeah. So I think I'll start with the main one probably because that was our first one. And I don't think we'd played in like maybe 2-3 months or something like that, it felt like. So we both went into it trying to learn the rules again. And it was definitely a good tournament for that. I think it was majority evil, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm trying to remember.
But it was pretty small.
I'm trying to remember
so.
I'm trying to remember what good armies were there.
So
you and I both
Avery,
took
Avery
evil men.
brought
Yeah.
Rivendell and Arnor. And yeah,
That's right.
I think it was some pretty generic stuff, I'd say. Which seems pretty normal for the sort of American meta. I think
Actually, just point of note, Avery brought Lothlorien and Arnor. It's an interesting combination.
Either way,
because I played that in the 5th round.
I mean, I did too. That was an unfortunate game for him. But yeah, it seems to be pretty generic. At least with the sort of lists like Minas Tirith, Mordor, those sorts of things, Azog's Legion. I think that's a general trend in the US, and this is not knocking US players or anything, but I think people in the US build their lists less competitively usually than a lot of European players will see. And I think that's just because they take what they like and because we have less of a coagulated scene. It's more about just taking fun stuff and less about like I'm gonna go to this tournament, I'm gonna compete and I'm gonna take this super competitive list for the entirety of the year.
I'd agree with you, Evan, actually, because it is like you do see, even when I played last year when I went to visit the US, most of the regional tournaments are like where you want to test out something fun. Not so much where you want to make Frankenstein's monster and destroy everybody to Kingdom Come, but you want to be like, oh, like I want to play this Legion. I want to try like one of the Fallen Realms list that's not as competitive, or I want to do like Alisher, I'm sure you too, like, oh, I can play dwarves and not have that pressure of wow, like I have to win every single event. But of course, through the process, you do get better and better and better as it goes because you are competing with just I'd say a grade B or like a B army instead of an A plus army. So it kind of builds in a sense a lot of the competitive US players, in my opinion, from just observing, a lot of us kind of have like the mechanical feel of the game where it's not just push numbers and push in like the best list and win with it. I don't know. We have more fun with it.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of where Evan and I were coming from when we played in these 2 tournaments. Like the one in Maine, I realized I'd painted up these 2 Mahood Kings and had never actually put them on the table. I don't think I'd ever actually used my Mahood as anything other than like flanking cavalry for the Farhad war leader. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put these. I've never played this army. I'm gonna put these guys on the table. I'm gonna see how they do. And it was actually a really fun army to play. Because I mean, one thing I'll say about Harad, and this was also true about the army. And then when I went to Michigan like a week later, I had known I wanted to paint up something fun, and I had all of these unpainted Condish horsemen. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna paint up an all mounted con list And I'm going to finish this thing up at 800 points, and I'm going to bring it. So I brought that out to Michigan, and the fun thing about both those armies is win or lose, they were going to do it quickly, and by God, they did. And I'll talk through I'll let Evan talk through Michigan in a second, but I mean, taking those camels are just so much fun to play, and you have to go into it with the mindset of, a whole bunch of these camels are going to die, but by God, they're going to die in a fun way. And it's like, oh, I sent in my camel and he died. Send in another camel. And that's the attitude you have to have with that army when you play with it. It's really fun, really fun army to kind of like pick up and take to a tournament where like it's not going to be the be all and end all whether you win or lose. But so Evan, you want to talk about the Michigan tournament?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was interesting going there, just because obviously we'd never played in Michigan before. We had absolutely no idea what they were going to take. And they, I think, definitely took some very interesting armies. There was a Black Riders list. There was a Vanquishers of the Necromancer list, which actually I think he got second, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah. And there was there was like this weird Goblin Town Balrog. They had some weird stuff there, is basically what I'm saying. Yeah, that was sort of like I guess what sort of Rainier was talking about earlier, which is I took that tournament was a sort of learn to play an army tournament for me. I took Dunland, which I'd never played before, so I was like, okay, let's learn how to play this army. Yeah, I had an absolute blast with them. I'm sure people listening, if you've played Dunland before, I know Rainier, you took Dunland to a tournament, didn't you?
There's so
they
much
were
fun. Like
an
there's
absolute blast.
because they have such weaknesses and such quirky strengths with like the Creebane flying all over the place. They look terrifying. They suck in combat. Like it's fun. And then you have Wild Man, Fear. It's just a fun list to play. I've even considered bringing it to Ardacon, but then I'm like, well, I'd probably just get 2 wins, so maybe not.
I mean, they're pretty good. They've got a good record in the U.S. now, don't they? Because you won a tournament with them, I won a tournament with them, so they're.
Well, Ardacon's a complete different story when you go up
Yeah,
against
they
them
would.
for like every other
Yeah,
game.
they're
Oh,
they're an
themselves.
army that has some very unfortunate matchups that you just can't
Yeah.
get over. I still haven't exactly figured out how to kill big heroes with them. I just sort of avoid them and run around because you don't really have.
You killed a
any
Balrog
tools.
with them.
I got lucky with that.
All right, well then get lucky.
That's
you
not
can't
my favorite strategy.
I mean, who's a bigger hero out there than the Balrog? I mean, Smaug, okay, but besides him, who's the bigger hero?
Also, like speaking of which, are you guys leaning towards any armies that you want to take to Ardacon? Are we disclosing that information?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I'll hint at it. I mean, I will continue my trend in playing evil men because I have taken a page from Rainier's book, and the last I think actually the last 3 tournaments I've played in, I've played evil men, and I think I will continue that train.
I will also continue the trend of playing evil men because I haven't really played for the past 3 years. And I don't want to try an army out for the first time at Ardacon because people are like, wow, look, there's a Rainier from the podcast. And I lose every single game. So my goal
is he's got the breaking of the fellowship.
Yeah, oh, wow, look. Oh, he's got all this wisdom. Oh my gosh. Wow, he brought hobbits.
Yeah.
He played him wrong. He's down like 86 points also.
Yeah.
So,
we also want we want all of our members to have the best list possible. So if any of us hits Rob, we can just absolutely destroy him. That's the plan.
Rob's list of Faramir, and Faramir.
That's the goal. For those of you who don't know, Rob will not be playing on our team. He is a traitor. He's going to be playing on the Wanderers team.
I think he changed his name, Evan, to Benedict Arnold. I don't know why he calls himself Benedict Arnold. I don't know if it's a historical figure of some sort from the United States history. But yeah,
So
he
many
changed it to independent.
people are so confused right now who have no
Well,
idea who that
so
is.
look,
But
it's a given that Rob is a traitor, but the real question is, whom will he be stabbing in the back? Is he
Ooh,
stabbing us in the back, or is he stabbing the Wanderers in the back?
is he a double agent?
Only time will tell.
Is he a double agent? Because when I play, if I play against Rob, he might look down. I might text him, "Hey, look under your table," and he'll find 20 euro just under the table. And it's
yeah.
just like, what is this? I don't know. And then he starts to do strategy, and I'm like, "Are you sure you want to do that, Rob?"
I mean,
So no,
I
but
told him
speaking of traitors,
already.
guys, I'm probably gonna betray y'all for the Dutch team come next year. Just be honest. Just to be honest, I want to wear orange. I want to be around all them tall boys. Yes. Rob and I are slowly, and Alisher, actually, Rob and I both have dual nationalities. Alisher has a dual nationality as well. He might betray us for Uzbekistan. So
Yep.
All right,
Classic team.
yeah, Uzbekistan's always been the hidden threat. So
that's the wild card.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
that's
see
right.
their results at the most recent EGC? Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm still not entirely convinced Uzbekistan is a real country and not something that just showed up on a random episode of Mission Impossible, but I guess we'll find out.
Wow. Okay.
No, but I'm looking forward to Ardacon. It'll be fun to like.
Yeah. Well, Alisher has already disclosed what he's playing, so.
Oh yeah. I mean, I let it loose.
Yeah.
So he's not playing Evil Men, which means
I'm not playing Evil Men.
Not on the
Yep.
team. I mean, we'll think about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see if I'm bringing 650 points of con. Actually,
Please
I'll
do
just
it, Matt. Let's both do it. I mean, none of them heroes. We'll just have
Yeah.
the carbon copy, like same
Yeah.
exact with me. Like 20 minutes into each round, we'll be like, "Did you win? Yeah, I did. Did you lose? Yeah, I lost." Well, a lot of extra time.
There's some fun armies with con at 650 points because I was looking at that. I mean, it's because it's such a scalable army. I mean, I took the 800 point version to this Michigan tournament, and it was 4 kings on chariots and 23 riders.
Ain't it? It's beautiful.
That's the army.
It's
like if you want to play an army that really does not care whether it's playing Maelstrom, it does not care whether it's going to fight together. It's like deploy me anywhere you want. Oh, did I roll a 2? Fine, just put me somewhere. I don't care.
It still cracks me up that your army of all banner bearers
it doesn't get a banner
because it didn't have a banner.
Yeah, I drew a game because I didn't have a banner.
Speaking of which, is Ardacon doing veto system?
No, I don't think it is. Yeah, I don't think it is.
I just remember my first Ardacon when one of those scenarios that everyone hate was drawn, and a chorus of 120 players were all like, "Show no, take it
away." But boy, does that con. I mean, so con is one of those lists. I've come to the conclusion that it's like it sits on this weird spectrum where like there are going to be certain scenario combinations against certain armies where it's just going to have no chance, and then there are going to be certain scenario combinations against certain armies where it's just going to just ride over them. And I mean, I was lucky
against the Black Riders.
Oh yeah, so I played against a great guy named Nolan at the tournament in Michigan, and played a Maelstrom scenario. I think it was Whole Ground. Or no, it was not. It was the Command the Battlefield, the one where there's the 4 different quadrants, and played it against the 9, and of course he got priority on turn 1 and came on the board first, and like 4 of his ring race rolled 1s and didn't come on, and then the other 5 like came on, and then I came on like behind him with the chariots, and I think by the end of turn 2, 5 of the wraiths were down. Just because like these wraiths came on the board, it was like, okay, empty battlefield, we should be fine. Oh my god, what's that? And a chariot would like drive over them from behind. I think it was a total army kill by like turn 4. It was just I mean, and I'm sorry, Nolan. It was like the worst conceivable situation. And the other one of the other scenarios I had was played divide and conquer against. And this is what made me think of that divide and conquer strategy. I played divide and conquer against Assault on Lothlorien, where you had like these 60 goblins and spiders and all this stuff that start on two parts of the board, and like my army started on the other two corners and like zeroed in on the side of the board that had the enemy, that had Musger and the leader on it, and just literally just like ran that over, turned around, and then ran back to the center just in time to meet the rest of the army and run that over too. And but I mean, I do have to say, Khan is a pretty hard counter to Assault on Lothlorien in a scenario where you don't have a lot of terrain where they can hide in. Because boy, do you run over a lot of those defense 4 goblins with those chariots. I think
it is a fun. I think, in my opinion, Khan is the most fun I've ever had in my entire life playing this game, because it is such a unique aspect of the game, and you can ally them in my opinion, with Easterlings and make them competitive. Because you can like get more troops, you can get more defense pike blocks, put the chariots on the flanks, and this is why, like, describing the lists of Khan, why I think the chieftains are so good, because you can get them at 85 points on a chariot and bolster out your numbers to where at 800 point pure Khan, I think I brought like around 39 or 40 with like 4 heroes on chariots. Like it's doable. I don't know. I like it. I'm gonna try to bring, if I can get my friend to give me back Khan to bring.
I mean, the only issue I have with them is they're very much a one-trick pony, and well, I guess they're a two-trick pony. They drive over people and they shoot people, and if you get yourself into a situation where neither of those tricks works, or like something just happened and you like you got yourself into the situation you wanted to, but you just the dice weren't there for you. There is no plan B with Khan, right?
The shooting can be not good. It can like have the opposite effect. I remember I went up against Khan at the event that I brought Dunlin to, and I had 4 archers. I put them up on a defensive barrier, and I took out like 4 Khandish horsemen, and that was enough because he only had something like 20 models at like a really small army, a small point tournament, and like you could do that. So like the bows look terrifying, but if you actually just look at the army and realize their base size makes them look with the big old banners and stuff, it's like, okay, like you have maybe 16 or strength 2 shots hitting on a 5 because you're constantly moving. It's not as terrifying, especially against high defense armies.
And once they get into combat, kind of like if the chariots burn through their might and they haven't done what they needed to do, it gets very dicey with the horsemen, because the horsemen they're defense 4 horsemen, and they once they get into combat, as soon as they lose a combat, they're dead. And there aren't that many of them. I mean, the chariots take a lot of work to take down, especially if you're fighting heroes without lances and stuff like that. But
if you play against them, just shoot the horse archers and do 2 or 3 heroic combats and only focus on the horse archers, and you'll break the army.
Right.
Which I assume will happen like in the games that did not go well with you.
Yeah, I mean the one I played where I tied was against All Mounted Rivendell. So we were both kind of shooting at each other, and he had lances, I didn't. He also got off a Wrath of Brunnen that kind of took a whole bunch of guys off their horses and killed a whole bunch of guys. And he also had what's his name? The guy with the spear died at the Gilgalad. Yeah, he had Gilgalad, and I had my shot at him where I think I got a chariot and a horseman into him charging, and he was at a might at that point, and I struck up, but I didn't strike up high enough, and then Gilgalad was, because he's got that +1 to wound, was able to take out my hero. But that's what I'm saying. If things don't work with a Khandish army, like if the tactic that if plan A doesn't work, they don't have a plan B, and then kind of they go down. But still a really fun army to play.
All this talk about Khan, people are like, wait, are Rainier and Matt bringing Khan to Ardacon?
Could happen.
Is the U.S. team just going to be this trash team where they just don't compete?
Yeah, I mean, I actually wonder. Maybe you play this. I wonder if the way to do it isn't like, I'm not sure you can do this at 650 points, but I wonder if the way to do this is 2 kings, some horsemen, and then Rutabi with a pike block. And the reason to have Rutabi with a pike block is to have the master of battle.
I built a similar list at a little bit higher points, like up to 700.
Yeah.
Just down to me, and I have played 2 kings. I played 2 kings in the U.S. If you remember Alisher at most of our events, it was 2 kings and Amdur. I think you need more numbers, so I would do a king and a chieftain. Just because you can use the chieftain, he can't rogue strike, still has 2 might, but he can. It's hard to kill them. Like a chieftain's just as hard to kill as a king on a thing. So, and you do save, I believe, 50 points or something. So yeah, I would do that. I know I've toyed with an 800-point list. Actually, I know it's like not smart, but I want to play it just because I want to play these models. The Dragon Emperor and chieftains on chariots, or with like a cab, or lower points. Rutabi, I think it is smart. Rutabi with a king and a chieftain, and then even tossing in some horse archers to get some objectives, and you get numbers. You do get, like you said, master of battle, and it's a grind list because it's not just you win or you lose in the first couple like rounds, like Rutabi and the pike block grind, and then you have what they're like creating. They're coming on the flanks, and they just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, and you just keep the chariots within 6 inches of Rutabi,
and they are defensively really sound, so it is a way to protect the flanks in the pike phalanx as well.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. All fair points. I don't know. Maybe there will be some content Ardacon. We'll have to see.
But yeah. Are you guys expecting anything from Ardacon? Nervous about anything? Are y'all going to go really competitively? Like, those are the questions.
Why would we go competitively to Ardacon? It's really just about theme lists.
Yeah, why would we? We're all just gonna go. We're gonna have like I Heart Manchester shirts, just like tourists, like looking around, like, hey guys, craft list. We're all bringing Condor.
My army is an army of hobbits, and it's modeled off of a market day during the summer.
I'm bringing my favorite army, Men of the West. I think they're a really good army.
I'm gonna bring what is the list? Goblin Town, but with no goblins, only heroes.
Well, look, I mean, you should stick with your evil men theme and just bring ruffians, right?
That's actually the one list I have not played, and I really want to play it, but I realized I would have to sacrifice my daughter's college tuition to buy the army, so I don't think I'm gonna do it. Yeah. But that said,
we need to make like a communal ruffian list, just like everybody chips in like 3 ruffians in the entirety of the US, and then one person gets to play it per tournament.
There you go.
One person has to play it per tournament. I mean, there was I think one guy who brought it to Nova. It brought like the 100 figure he brought like the 100 figure Ruffin army to
I think Nova. He got the best painted evil army too, or close to it.
Maybe I can't remember. All I know is he got like rocked in every game.
It is hard because you look at all the numbers and you're like, wow, I can make this happen. I know I was gonna bring the Hobbit Legion to the tournament in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And I was like, Alisher, I haven't played this game in years. Like, let's play. I'll bring it. We played against 2 guys who like aren't competitive. I think we killed 2 Rohan soldiers, and we like got broken. Like, it just nothing happened. We didn't even kill them with like bows, or kill them with like 2 traps killed them. And like that was it.
That was the most. That was probably because we had played the night before, and I had played Khazad-dûm, and you had played them, and I was like, oh, okay, these are fine, That was the most depressing game I have ever, because it felt like it didn't matter what you did, right?
Right.
I think like we played had we had a clock, we would have won just because of how slow it is to play like from that perspective, but that's really the only way you like. I can't
no
in my
fun way to
mind.
play it too, because we were like exhausted by the end, and they were like, let's continue and finish the game. We were like,
Well,
okay.
they kept saying like at a certain point you're kind of like, all right, like it doesn't matter what you do with these hobbits, nothing will happen. They're like, no, we're just having such a good time. Like let's just keep playing the game. Let's just keep it going. They were having a dandy old
They were
time.
having
Renier and I
a
were like
blast. For them, it
packing
was
our
like that whack-a-mole game at like Chuck E. Cheese, where you just
Oh
smash
yeah.
all these things, and it's just like, yeah. And that's when I decided, actually, I'm gonna play Dunman instead, because this sucks.
Well,
I think we had a conversation right after that, and it was like, Renier, you cannot play hobbits.
I mean, well, what did you expect from an army whose field manual is actually like a VCR tape of Home Alone?
It's true.
It's like, yeah, and then you put the tripwire up, and then the cavalry runs into this and falls over.
But it looks like so much. I kid you not, in Korea, being like away from the game, it looked like so much fun reading the rules. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be fun. And then just Theoden's Legion just like slaughter them all. And I was like, it was flashbacks to my past life when I was in the Children's Crusade, and it was just horrible. It was crazy.
I have to say, we have a Hobbit army. I have played it on several occasions. If you end up, so I actually wonder whether the Hobbit army is one that's really going to benefit from the veto system, because if ever there was an army that really kind of depends on getting the right scenario matchup to win the game, it's definitely the Hobbits, because they really depend on having an army that's forced to come to them for some reason and kind of walk into that volley of stones backed up by archers.
And even that though, like for me though, it felt like, I don't know, you can't really, being an evil player, and like a lot of us play evil quite often, or just some good armies, you have those big tools that you can do fun things with, like the Crebain. Like I had a blast, I could throw them like all over the place, or like some random heroes where I could be like, oh, defense. The Hobbit, it's literally just like, stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding. Well, Russian warband here, and then they all die.
Yeah, I mean, your tool for dealing with big enemy heroes is like another Hobbit.
It's literally like, in like those chasing scenes where you're running away from the bad guy, and they're throwing like produce on the floor and everything to stop the person. They're like, that's what I did with my heroes, just throwing hobbits like on the floor, like behind them, and the bad guy was just like steamrolling until there you had it. Pippin was like, mercy.
But, it would be a devastating army though with the hobbits would be if you could shoot into combat with them.
Yeah,
maybe the Goblin Town.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, just forget Rosie, kill them all.
They're all throwing stones at themselves. Like
your move phases literally wouldn't exist, because every Hobbit would stay still and shoot every single turn, just like no matter what happened. Just like,
you need Edward Longshanks leading a Hobbit army where he's like, like the lines clash and the hobbits are going down, and he's like, archers fire, but we'll hit our own men. We have reserves.
Oh gosh. Yeah, but I look forward to us playing an Ardacon. We'll see what happens. We'll see if our team is competitive at all. I feel like the US-ish team has always had the potential, but we've never made it happen.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah. I mean, one thing I'll say is I won't bring a screwball list this year. I'm not. I have in the past on many occasions brought a screwball list to Ardacon. Yes, the hero chariot, the dwarven hero chariot at Ardacon, which was a lot of fun. but
the only thing you can say.
Yeah, but went the way kind of expected it to.
And me having limited playing, especially with all the scenarios that came out like a few years ago, Lord have mercy, guys. I'm just hoping to win a couple games.
Yeah. So all right, guys.
See. But yeah, thank you for joining us on the podcast, Alisher. It's been fun. Thank you, viewers, for listening to our various subjects that we talked about and discussed. If you have any lists that you want to submit, feel free to post them on the comments section or on our Facebook page. I know we will bring some from the past. So if it's past a couple months and you haven't had your list talked about, repost it again. We'll try to get it out there. But yeah, besides that, I hope you guys have a happy hobbying. I look forward to playing with some Dutch players in the Netherlands. Evan looks forward to playing with some Dutch players in the Republic of Ireland. And Alisher is going to continue to dominate in Pennsylvania, and so will Matt in Boston. So yeah, thanks for everything, guys.
All right. Bye, guys.